Hedwig Herbarium presents Why the Internet Demonizes Avoidant Behavior. A really frustrating trend in pop psychology, especially on social media, is the flooding of content about attachment theory, but it often gets flattened into a simple heroes versus villains narrative. People who exhibit avoidant behavior are frequently labeled as cold, calculating, or manipulative, but there's a massive, profound difference between tactical manipulation and the involuntary survival strategy of someone navigating CPTSD and developmental trauma. The current cultural obsession with attachment styles tends to view everything through the lens of relationships, often ignoring deeper trauma. Avoidants are often villainized for a few specific reasons. The anxious avoidant trap. A lot of the content online is written from the perspective of anxiously attached individuals who've been hurt by an avoidant partner pulling away. Because the pain of being shut out is so intense, the person who pulled away is retroactively branded as malicious or narcissistic. Conflating intent with impact. When someone goes cold or retreats, the impact on the other person can feel like abandonment or punishment. Pop psychology often makes the mistake of assuming the intent was to punish, when in reality, the avoidant person was just trying to survive an internal panic attack. The narcissism trend. Narcissist has become a catch all buzzword for anyone who handles conflict poorly or needs emotional distance. While narcissists absolutely use withholding as a weapon, genuine avoidant behavior is rooted in fear, not a desire for control. The trauma lens, avoidance as cocooning. When you look at avoidance through the lens of CPTSD and childhood trauma, it stops looking like a personality flaw and starts looking like what it actually is: a dysregulated nervous system trying to keep you alive. In childhood, if the people who were supposed to look after you were unpredictable, overwhelming, dangerous, or emotionally neglectful, your brain had to adapt. You couldn't fight back and you couldn't run away. So you adapted internally. Chronic hypervigilance and perceived threats. When you have CPTSD, your brain's smoke detector, the amygdala, is dialed up to maximum sensitivity. It flags normal relational friction, vulnerability, or even just high emotional energy as an active threat. Pulling away isn't a conscious choice to be distant. It's an involuntary response to a nervous system screaming, "We are not safe here." The freeze and faint responses. We all know fight or flight, but trauma survivors heavily rely on freeze and faint or collapse. Cocooning is a textbook freeze response. When the world feels like too much, your body shuts down your social engagement system to conserve energy and protect your core self. It's like an emotional circuit breaker tripping to prevent the whole house from catching fire. Autonomy as survival. If your boundaries were constantly violated as a child, or if the closeness felt suffocating and dangerous, then total self reliance becomes your only shield. In this state, relying on someone else doesn't feel like connection, it feels like putting your neck on a chopping block. Cocooning is a way to reclaim absolute control over your environment so you can breathe. The core difference: a manipulator uses distance to control you. A trauma survivor uses distance to regulate themselves. One is an offensive strategy to gain power, the other is a defensive sanctuary to find safety. Recognizing that your avoidance is actually an unintentional survival mechanism is a huge step. It means that you aren't bad or broken, you're just carrying an old shield that is incredibly heavy to hold. A lot of what we see on social media is a defense mechanism in its own right. By labeling every complex, painful relational rupture with buzzwords like orbiting or breadcrumbing, people create a neat narrative where they are the flawless victim and the other person is a cartoon villain. It's a way to bypass the messy, agonizing reality that two well intentioned people can deeply hurt each other simply because their survival strategies clash. Orbiting versus testing the waters. When someone is healing from CPTSD, their attempts to reconnect or make amends are often viewed through the worst possible lens online. Let's look at what the internet calls these behaviors versus what is actually happening internally. The internet definition: staying on the periphery of someone's life, liking social media posts, watching stories, etc., to keep them hooked or keep tabs on them without committing. The trauma reality: when you've been in a deep cocoon or freeze state, coming back into the world is terrifying. Your nervous system is highly sensitive to rejection. Peeking out from the cocoon, watching a story, or sending a low stakes test isn't a game. It's a profoundly vulnerable attempt to see if the environment is safe enough to step back into. It's saying, I'm still here and I care, but I'm terrified of being blasted by a fire hose of conflict if I knock on the door. Breadcrumbing versus low emotional battery. The internet definition: intentionally sending sporadic, brief messages just to keep someone interested while having no intention of forming a real connection. The trauma reality: CPTSD causes massive emotional and physical burnout. During a freeze state, a survivor might only have the capacity to give 5% of themselves. Sending a brief text or checking in isn't an intentional breadcrumb to tease the other person. It's literally all the energy they have to give at that moment. It's a genuine attempt to maintain a thread of connection using a completely depleted battery. The clashing of two different wounds. The reason people lash out so intensely online is that an avoidant person's survival strategy triggers another person's deepest core wound. The avoidance trauma says, if I get too close or stay too long, I'll be consumed, controlled, or destroyed. I must pull back to survive. The anxious or hurt person's trauma says, if you pull away from me, it means I'm unlovable, defective, and being abandoned. I must chase or attack to survive. When the avoidant pulls back to regulate, the other person experiences a massive spike of panic. To cope with that pain and protect their own ego, they turn to the internet, where they find a ready made community eager to validate their pain by demonizing the avoidant. Calling an avoidant a predator or manipulator allows the hurt person to feel a sense of righteous anger instead of the raw, agonizing grief of feeling abandoned. It turns a tragic mismatch of coping mechanisms into a moral failing. A crucial distinction for your peace of mind. Intent does not erase impact. It is still true that pulling away can deeply hurt people who care about you. However, having an impact on someone does not mean your character is flawed. You can hold accountability for the fact that your cocooning hurts others while still having deep, radical compassion for the fact that you're just trying to feel safe in your own body. You are allowed to step away to regulate. You are allowed to try to repair things when you have the capacity. Healing means learning how to communicate those needs over time, but it definitely doesn't require hitting yourself over the head for how your nervous system learned to survive childhood. Please feel free to share your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more. Blessed be.